with how I can get my stream, the video to be correct on you. Hang on one sec.
No, you're good. I got
Yeah,
some.
give me just like 60 seconds here, man. I'm
Yeah,
gonna see
go
if I
ahead.
can.
Take
Thank
your
you.
time.
Because usually I can just get my show, my piece to just share the screen like right now, but then it messes it up in this side.
All right, let's click off of that. We're good on that. Go back to StreamYard. All right.
You know what I'll just do? I'll just hit. Are you going to be putting this right now on Facebook?
Yeah, we're live right now on
man.
Facebook right now. So just take as much time as you need.
Okay.
We just got my banner going for you here. So
Cool.
everybody that's on Facebook that's listening to me now, I'm on live, of course, with Ryan Derks. He is running for 5th district, if I'm not mistaken, for the House.
Sir.
He's going against Emmanuel Cleaver, Republican out of Kansas City. Believe you're from Lee Summit. So
yeah, I was born and raised in Lee Summit and then moved. I've been living in Kansas City for the last 10 years.
All right, and so we're going to be talking. So we're going to be talking politics with him. We're talking policies. So just give us a second. I know he's trying to get his.
I'm good. I'm ready now.
Are you ready? Okay.
Yep.
So we're gonna go ahead and get this thing started. We're gonna go right to you already know it's the Dre Mac Show, so we're gonna get the audio version started, and I'll be right back to you. So just give me a second. We're gonna get this thing going. You just reached the hottest podcast in your ear right now. I'm sorry. I'm on Speaker Radio too. I'm on Speaker Radio live, and I'm live on Facebook. I forgot that I muted my mic for just a second, but I'm on right now with Ryan Derks. He's a Republican out of Lee Summit who's running against Emmanuel Cleaver. Ryan, how are you doing today?
Dre Mac, I am just fine, and I'm happy to be here. I love this medium of media. You know, you have no idea what you're getting when you watch local news or even national news. But what you and I are doing right here, we're bypassing all the cameras, bypassing all the producers, and it's just two guys talking. So I'm happy to be here today, man. Thank you.
Appreciate it. Now, already know if you're new to the channel or new to anything that I'm doing right now, I'm live on Speaker Radio. You can also check this podcast on iHeartRadio, Spotify, Apple Podcasts, Google Podcasts, really wherever you get your podcasts at. All you have to do is Google the Dre Mac Podcast Show, and you can pull up any one of my podcasts. You can also go to my YouTube channel, because right now this is live on the YouTube channel also. And Ryan, before we get started on anything, this is a serious question. This is a serious question now.
All right.
Before any of my guests come on, I have to ask this question: Marvel or DC? Because if you pick one or the other, it might have to go downhill with this. At least it's Batman. So yeah. At least it's Batman. So it's Batman. So I'm good with that. Now, if you would have picked up Superman, we would have probably had an issue.
No, see, I just don't like Superman. He can't be beat. He's just like, there's no weakness. I know he's got kryptonite, but still, like, he's everything. So I like Batman. Batman is he's human. He doesn't have superpowers, but he's a billionaire and he uses it to like try to make the city better. So I've always liked Batman.
Right, absolutely, especially when he's just beating the snot out of thugs. So
Yep.
Yep. So if people don't know, if people are new to your politics or whatever, I want to kind of introduce them to you. I know that you're going against Emmanuel Cleaver in this year's election, and this year's election is going to be big for everyone right now because of everything that's going on. So I want to kind of introduce yourself to everyone, and then we're going to go into the political topics that's on your page after that.
Mm-hmm. So kind of here's the thing, Dre, is that how old are you, Dre Mac?
I'm turning 40 in 2 weeks.
Okay, so I'm 33. You and I are closer in age than you or I with the average congressman up in Washington, D.C.
Absolutely.
I've been watching this thing fall apart now for the last 12 years.
Mm-hmm.
And at this point, I don't really care whose problem it is or whose fault it is that got us into all of these different issues you and I are about to talk about.
Right.
I just want somebody to tell us the truth and just take them head on. And here's the thing, man, is I don't have every single answer, but I keep reading history books. I keep reading philosophy. I talk with people like you and I. My team and I, we go probably 2,000 houses a week right now through Kansas City and Jackson County and just knock on the doors and introduce ourselves. The problem is the way I see it is that there have been money has gotten to be so corrupt and corrupt everyone that these massive businesses like Amazon will buy lobbyists, get their own laws passed for them, and then little guys like you and I are just left with what's left over. Then we get those jobs sent off to China. Now you and I have even less. Then we have people like George H.W. Bush, who we know flew cocaine in and put it through the inner cities, destroyed. Like, man, you and I are just average Americans. And there are so many things over the last 75 years that have destroyed our country. And so, you know what, man? I know I'm a Republican and I know the stereotypes.
Right. And that's kind of why I wanted you to come on, because the stereotypes of Republicans and you've read in history and I know history. The Republican Party was big as far as the African American community. The Republican Party was originally a big advocate for African Americans, for abolitionists. Back in the 1800s, going into the 19th century, going into the 20th century, and then all of a sudden, and to me, it was during the Nixon administration when everything started to change and flip flop, and going into the 80s and on from there. And a lot of Republicans get a bad rap. So
Dre, I'm telling you right now, all that knowledge you've got, that's dangerous, man.
Yeah, I know.
You're right. What was it, like the first 50 years of black men in America being equal, being real men, right? Not slaves, but wasn't it the first 40 or 50 years of congressmen were all Republican black men? Yeah. And our history has definitely changed around on us. Right.
So I was looking at a lot of your issues, and the main. Okay, so I work for I work for Ford. I'm part of UAW. That's big for me. I'm a union guy. 110% for UAW 249. So I'm looking at some of the issues that you have. And the three that I'm going to talk about particularly, and it comes to my community, and I'm going to talk about a little bit what my community is really asking for me asking questions prior to you having you on here, is let's go to economic debt and taxes, because that's something that all working Americans can look at. Absolutely. And you're saying smaller government equals bigger wallets. One of the phrases that you said is say you don't need a raise. You need a government with a balanced budget, low debt, low spending, and lower federal taxes. How do you achieve that?
You've got to keep in mind that for every government agency and every government branch and every government department that gets paid by you and I, all those taxes that get taken out of our paycheck and whatnot go to pay that. All right. So first off, the government's way too big. We've got the Department of Housing, and they're supposed to help us with housing. But what are they responsible for? Well, in the last 65, 70 years, they've created the projects. They've put poor people into the projects, kept them there, And now we have this cycle of poverty where people don't own anything. They just rent, right?
Absolutely.
So I'm saying, why do we even have this anymore? It's completely failed. Let's eliminate Department of Housing. That's one less expense at the federal level. And then let you and I and all of our community people, our city council, our state representatives step in and fix that. Same with the Department of Education. That was created in 1981. That costs a lot of money for us, the taxpayers. And look at Kansas City School District, man.
Yeah.
Terrible. We need more charter schools. So let's go back to the local. The charter schools are more local.
Right. And with the Hickman Middle School District, we've seen schools close. My son, who is on the spectrum of autism, was in a STEM program in elementary school, but because 2 school closings happened, he was snatched out of a program that he's very attached to, and had to adjust going back to a school. And anybody knows that anybody that's on that has autism or is on the spectrum of autism, it's very hard for them to adjust. So getting him adjusted. So when I'm looking at, the things that are going on, like what you're talking about, those are really big as far as, our communities.
Absolutely. And so when it comes back to what does it mean to have a smaller government and a bigger wallet? That's what I mean. The Department of Education, it's failing us. The Department of Housing, it's failing us. The Department of Agriculture. Now, this isn't something so big for us here, Dre, in the city, but out in the farmers, man, you have no clue. China and Brazil are this close to owning the entire ag industry, and they're doing it the same way Amazon is taking over. They get so big that they buy the politicians. They pass laws that only the big guys can afford, and they've priced out all the small farmers in America. China and Brazil are this close. So the Department of Agriculture, food stamps, that's not helping anybody. And then you just get these. Now, the other part you had asked about was when I say you don't need a raise, you need a government that's got responsible. Okay, so check this out. That's a really common thing right now. $15 minimum wage. We need a raise, right? Who doesn't want to raise?
Right.
But Dre, let me ask you this. Your grandparents, grandma, grandpa, did they ever tell you like my grandpa did? My grandpa used to say, back when I was just a kid, I could buy a Butterfinger for a penny.
Right.
Okay.
Right. Yeah.
Right. So what happened? Now this is where you get to that graduate level or whatever when you talk about economic theory and whatnot, inflation and everything. The reason everything keeps getting more expensive, the reason that 1 penny Butterfinger now costs $2.50 is because the guys up in Washington, D.C. have never said no to spending. They just print more money. Therefore, everything becomes less valuable.
Right.
And, we won't go into that specific economic, theory and that economic issue, but that's the reason rent keeps going up, groceries keep going up, gas keeps going up, but you're not getting a raise is because up in Washington, D.C. this year, we keep printing more and more money. Dre, it's the same reason we've been able to afford the war in Iraq and Afghanistan for 20 years.
Right.
They just print more money. So what I'm suggesting, now I come from a finance background and economics background.
Right.
So,
I read it in your bio.
Yeah. So that's where this issue we're talking about right now is really important to me. If we could get back to a monetary policy of strong U.S. dollars, man, you remember back in the 50s and 60s, the husband would work, the wife could stay home, the kids could go to a nice suburban house and school and a couple cars, right? They had a nice lifestyle.
Right.
You can't afford, husband and wife on minimum wage right now can't afford a 1-bedroom apartment anywhere in America. That's what I'm getting back to. It's a really high-level conversation because you have to understand how money works and economics and inflation and whatnot. But I think a lot of people miss the point. They say, well, I just need a raise.
Right.
That'll get me to buy more.
Everything it continues to inflate when you have that raise. And something that you actually posted on here that I was looking at last night was the reinstate a modern version of GLASS, the Seagull Act of 1933. This legislation requires banks to separate investment money from savings money. The result of repealing this in the 1990s was Wall Street using your savings as collateral to take more and more risky investments with you covering their losses. And I think that is humongous to those like myself who I don't have a retirement per se. Everything in my account goes to an investment. So explain a little bit more about that for those who are looking to invest, those who are trying to save their money to try to invest it so they can be able to retire at a younger age and so on and so forth.
What you're describing are the billionaire bankers who have completely bought our entire country and then reworked it to work just for them.
Mm-hmm.
So do you remember back in 1930s, there was the big Great Depression, the stock market crash?
Yes.
Right after that happened, the politicians passed a bill called Glass-Steagall. And what that meant was that if you're a bank, you either need to be a bank for little old grandma who's saving and investing her personal money, right? A savings bank, savings and loans, or you need to be one of these Wall Street speculators who's doing these really risky and aggressive type of behaviors in the stock market, okay?
Right.
So for 70 years or so, we had two separate types of banks. The safe bank for my little old grandma and the risky bank for people who would like to have fun with money. So Bill Clinton in the 90s, he repealed that, and then they became one. So now this risky gambler could use grandma's money as a down payment for his risky gambles. So if he blows up, well, don't worry, we have all these other people's money. So what I'm saying is break up the banks, in short.
Right.
And again, man, this is not a Republican thing. This isn't a Democrat thing. This is a putting America and Americans first. The bankers have gotten out of control. It's time to break them up and separate them back so that you and I can save for a nice little retirement.
Yeah, I completely agree. And another one that I believe is really important that stuck out to me as far as what you were saying on the eliminating the capital gains tax first to ensure you can maximize investing for your future, eliminating and lowering all taxes such as a federal possible such as a federal income tax, federal payroll tax, and death tax. You also said, did you know that the federal government couldn't tax the citizens until 1913 with the 16th Amendment? Do you know how they paid for the federal expenses before 1913? And that is for people who don't know anything about investment. And like I said, for my community, you know, we're looking at, you know, trying to create jobs, trying to create new business owners, more black businesses and stuff like that. And I believe that that would help in benefiting those who are trying to save a little bit so they can create their own business. Like you said, putting Americans first. By putting that money back into their wallet, they could be able to save and to be able to start the business that they want to start. That they want to start. Kind of expand on that. Have the federal taxes? Have they paid for the federal expenses before 1913?
So let me give first, and I'll come full circle on this. I'm going to give a shout out to Joey Cuts down there at 180V Barber Salon down at 18th and Vine. Every Wednesday night at 7 p.m. My day job is stock market investing. I was talking to Joey quite a few weeks ago, and he said, in the black community, we need to learn how to make wealth and own things, right? And I said, all right, man, well, look, this is my full-time job. I'll come down here once a week. You guys come in, and I'll teach you how to make real money in the stock market. So every Wednesday at 7 at Joey's Barber Shop, it's a boys-only thing. So bring, and Dre, you're invited. Bring your fans, bring your guests. I don't care. And that's in 2 nights from now. So the capital gains tax, if you make money, first off, you earn a paycheck and then you pay taxes. Whatever you have left over, if you invest it in the stock market and you invest in an American company maybe and you make a little bit of profit,
right?
Maybe you save up your money and you buy an apartment or a duplex and you rent it out to make a little extra money.
Right.
Then you have to pay another tax called capital gains tax. This is one of the most destructive taxes, in my opinion, because you've already paid tax. You've taken the risk to save and invest in America, and then you have to pay another tax. This keeps people from achieving as much wealth as possible. Now, here's what they'll tell you, Dre, okay? The people will tell you, well, the billionaires, it's only the billionaires. I remember Bernie Sanders, one of his big things was, we need to increase the capital gains tax because of the billionaires on Wall Street. And here's the thing he's not telling you, man, is that yes, there are billionaires on Wall Street, but 99.99% of the people making money and paying capital gains tax are you and me, just average guys, you know?
Right.
And in the stock market, what are you buying? You're buying ownership in American companies. So like you are investing in the American economy, and then the government just takes more money out and spends it on junk. So I want to see a full repeal of the capital gains tax, because if you're saving money, if you're being responsible to invest for the future, if you're investing in America, why should the government get in the way again and take that from you?
Right.
Now,
Absolutely.
that little statement I put on there about, do you know how the government funded itself? So again, here's not a lot of things, something not a lot of people know. And this is why I love reading history, because you can see, especially in the sense of politics, you can see how other countries have operated. U.S. citizens did not used to pay a federal tax. Whatever you earned in your paycheck, if you earned $100 today, you took $100 home. You didn't pay taxes.
Right.
You earned capital gains. You didn't used to pay taxes. If you died, you didn't used to pay the death tax. All of that junk. You only paid taxes to like your city and state. Okay. Yeah. And then in 1913, I believe it was 1913, they passed an amendment that said the federal government can put taxes on people.
Right.
Before they did that, man, they used to put tariffs on other countries. So that they would come and say, all right, China, you want to do business in America? You're going to add a little 1% fee to that, and that's going to go to pay for our federal expenses.
Right.
It forced the federal guys to not charge too much to foreign companies, so we would keep a responsible, tight, well-oiled little federal government. But it also kept us from getting too big because they weren't screwing out the American citizens, right? Now they just take as much as they want to from the American citizens. So this is another thing. This is where I say it comes full circle. That's why I go down to Joey's Barbershop at 180 V Salon Wednesdays at 7 p.m. and I teach for free. Whoever comes in, I will teach you how to make money in the stock market. Because if we don't figure this thing out, man, we just keep this cycle of poverty going. And that's where I'm a big finance, I'm a numbers guy. That's been my career. I feel like if we can repeal these taxes, you as an individual can keep a lot more, and then you can invest it in your own community rather than sending it to Washington, D.C., taking their cut, and then sending it back here for some silly project that we don't. Meanwhile, we have 10,000 empty homes here in Kansas City, right?
Absolutely.
Yep.
Absolutely. And then, because I know that you're going against Congressman Emmanuel Cleaver.
Yeah.
I know one of his things was to change the federal budget. And I think they voted for the tax codes last year, but he said last year I voted in favor of H.R. 8, the American Taxpayer Relief Act of 2012, also known as the legislation to invert the fiscal cliff. This bill now law was not perfect, but I believe it is in reaching out and finding compromise that we find a way to move forward, keeping our economy on the right track, increasing employment for hardworking people in the Missouri 5th District. When we're looking at money and just trying to survive, that's really what everybody's doing right now, is trying to keep their head above water. When you have Congressman Cleaver saying even though this bill was law, it wasn't perfect. What do you say to something like that when you're putting a bill in that you clearly didn't really like, but you're saying, hey, we're just trying to keep the economy afloat? What do you say to something like that?
I say Cleaver's full of crap. He's been up there for 15 years. He sits on the banking and finance committee, and not once has he ever grilled those bankers. He sits on the banking and finance committee, and not once has he ever talked about capital gains tax. Love Trump or hate Trump, Trump got one of the largest tax cuts passed about 2 years ago, and Cleaver voted against that one. So I think his better days are behind him, and I think he's just trying to toe the political line now. I think he's full of crap.
Absolutely. Now, let's move over to education, because I'm 100% with you.
Okay.
When you're talking about No Child Left Behind, I believe that is horrible for any child, especially children, inner city children.
Yep.
And I've seen that firsthand. So you posted legislation like No Child Left Behind and Common Core are failing our students.
Yep.
Many of today's youth are losing interest in high school, which means lower educated American populace. Consider this: the Department of Education was created in 1979. Before then, we had created the atomic bomb, electricity jets that fly faster than the speed of sound, birth control pills, semiconductors, countless medical advancements. Purpose, the Theory of Gravity, he even put a man on the moon, all done by youth who didn't get their education orders from the Department of Education in DC, but rather local education systems. Give the education back to the states. How do you achieve that? Because honestly, I see that as progressive more than just a standard. That's why that stuck out to me when I'm reading this information. That stuck out to me so much because, of course, I have children. I have children that's in high school right now, and and I have two in middle school, two in elementary, two in high school. So I'm seeing this firsthand, the way that this No Child Left Behind thing. At first, you think about it in theory and say that is a good idea, but if our children is not being educated properly and they just keep getting pushed on up without being challenged, being educated properly, I think that's failing that child. What do you say to that?
It's very easy. It's a one-page bill. It fully repeals and eliminates the Federal Department of Education, and it sends the exact thing down to all 50 states and lets them figure it out. And here's the thing, man. Missouri, we already have our own Department of Education. So it's not like we have to recreate the wheel. It's already there. Just let them figure it out. And keep sending that same, let's just say we gave Missouri $65 billion last year for schools. Okay, give them $65 billion again, but let them figure the schools out. Again, this is what's really messed up about America right now. In the last 70 to 80 years, we get these departments, like I mentioned earlier, agriculture, housing, education. We have one group of people decide how the entire country should do education. Department, and the second thing people don't consider is now all the lobbyists know exactly where they go. They go to Washington, D.C. All the crooks, all the big bankers, all of these people who are kind of evil almost, they all just go to Washington, D.C., and then they get whatever they want for the whole country.
Check
this out. If we split this thing up, if we split it up and we had 50 different states executing the education system, you'd have 50 states experimenting on what works best. You know what I mean? Okay, so now let's just say maybe down in Mississippi, education gets worse. Maybe in Virginia, education gets pretty dang good. And then something happens, I don't know what's going on up in Iowa, but they tried something, and now their test scores, they're getting all these kids who are going to Ivy League schools and all this great stuff, right? What's going to happen immediately is the rest of the country is going to say, what the heck are they doing up in Iowa?
Right.
And start copying those models. But right now, man, since 1980, so that's what, 20, 30 something years? It's been 40 years, whatever is going on now. 40 years. And it isn't getting better. And so that's why I say do a clean repeal and send it back down. I think No Child Left Behind is terrible, man. You might have a kid in third grade that gets stuck and he never can read better than a third grade level, Or, for example, Common Core. Common Core has completely changed how math is being done. And now the parents can't help the child at home. Like the way you and I learned math is not the way your kids learn it now.
It's sure not. And you're absolutely correct.
Yeah. So how do we get our kids to be attracted to STEM when they can't even figure out how to do this stuff? And something else you might see a lot of people don't consider. You'll see more charter schools pop up. You'll see more magnet schools. You'll see more private schools, religious homeschooling. All of them are good ways to try. But you'll start to see some schools that focus in, let's just say, North Kansas City School District, turns out they've got a killer art program for high school. Right. Well, now maybe Dre Mack wants his daughter to go to this great musical school. So now you've got your teenage daughter who's already really interested in school, and now she's going to a exclusive music-focused high school. How much more excited would she be in her very, very important years as a teenager, as opposed to right now? Again, it's that one size fits all across the country. So, man, that's why I say, and again, like I said at the very beginning, I don't have all the answers.
Right.
That's why I think we should eliminate the Department of Education in Washington, D.C., and let Americans experiment in 50 different states on what works best.
Right. Yep. Absolutely. And another thing, because I do have friends that are teachers, shout out to my good friend, Michelle Lee, but you put on other educational programs that need to be encouraged and experimented with. which are education savings accounts, incentive pays for teachers,
Yeah.
less administrators in schools, teacher retirement savings accounts, voucher program, charter schools, and even homeschooling, which you already talked about.
Yep.
How does the average teacher who is busting their butt, especially a lot of the ones who are in inner city schools that are trying to do their best with what they got, and Michelle said, "Hey, buddy," because I'm gonna shout her out. That's my good friend. But with her, I'm looking at her because that's a good friend of mine. But she's busting her butt. She needs to be able to make a living wage, especially with you got student loans, and we're going to talk a little bit about the student loans that you have here. Yep. How does she get help? How does it benefit her as a teacher?
First off, Dre Mac, let me give a shout out to Michelle Lee, because you are on the front lines of raising our next generation. And there are so many failing school districts filled with bad teachers, but also filled with good teachers who are feeling hopeless right now. So what you had read off a lot of those different ways different states are experimenting. Again, when you pull this federal requirements back and you let all 50 states start experimenting, you also let all 50 states start experimenting with how to compensate their teachers. And so let's say, another good example, Grandview School District. I don't even know if that's a school district. How about Blue Springs School District? Maybe they start getting really good and somehow they start paying 20% more than the other schools. They're going to start attracting the best teachers, right? It's going to start going all over, and then other schools, again, are going to start competing to figure out, okay, what is Blue Springs doing? And why are all the families sitting their kids there? We need to get better. And so teachers like Michelle can say, look, I'm busting my butt. I do this after school program. My kids love me. I get great marks, whatever. Maybe Michelle can be one of the best teachers at Blue Springs. Again, like I said, I don't have all the answers. Right. But I feel like if we start repealing those federal rules, then we can start letting people like Michelle. And here's the other thing, Michelle, I have to give you a shout out. A cornerstone of this campaign I'm running is responsibility. So Dre Mac, we'll talk about unions, I'm sure, before we're done here, because you're in a union.
Oh yeah.
If you don't like unions, man, and you're upset with your union, you have to take the responsibility of running for a leadership position in your union. Absolutely. If Michelle, I'm imagining we're all kind of young. Michelle, if you don't like the way your school is going, you got to step up and run for a leadership position at your school, that kind of thing. I mean, I'm 33. That's why I'm doing this. I can't sit around and watch the boomers just tell us what to do anymore. I feel like even in this position right here, there's so much hell that I go through, and there are so many haters. But I feel like our generation really needs to step up and start trying to figure some solutions here.
Absolutely. And again, for y'all who just now coming on, I'm talking to Ryan Derks, Republican, is running against Emmanuel Cleaver for the House. And my biggest thing is I don't really care, because I'm an independent. I'm not a Democrat or a Republican, but all I care about is solutions. Problem, fix it. How do we fix it? Yeah. And I don't really care which side it comes from, as long as it gets fixed. So one thing that you talked about, and we're going to go. My other thing was just healthcare, before I go into some other things that are just going on right now, the big elephants in the room. But when you start talking about student loans and guaranteeing the repayment of student loans, I think this is one of the biggest things, honestly, that really got me, because you're saying that allow anyone with a student loan to declare bankruptcy, because so many people are out that is trying to just live, but they got to pay all the student loan debt back. And then they end up getting in debt because they're paying student loan debt, got to take care of their house. They got to drive a crappy car for a couple of years because they can't save money. I mean, I was that kid, coming out 21. So I completely understand that. Talk a little bit about how, having student loans, being declared into bankruptcy and just the whole thing about this, because it's a little bit, but I want you to kind of talk a little bit more about that.
Okay, so let me first off start by saying I am not talking about loan forgiveness.
Right.
I am completely against a blanket forgiveness of everyone's student loans. Okay. Now, I can empathize, because I was a 17-year-old when I went to college. man, and like today's 17-year-olds seem even less mature than I was at 17. I can't imagine taking $100,000 or more dollar loan out, right?
Right.
Taking it back. So here's what I'm suggesting. Now, it's not just a declare bankruptcy, it's a few things all at the same time. Because we also have to consider all the people taking student loans in the future. So what I'd be completely fine with right now, of all the different types of debt that you can incur, student loan is just about the only kind you can't declare bankruptcy on. You know, a lady in America could go to the plastic surgeon and get breast implants and then default on that loan, right? But they're not going to take them from her, right? Student loan debt, you should be able to declare bankruptcy. If you do, though, all of those same black marks will apply to you, which means 7 years of not being able to get a home loan or credit cards or auto loan or any of that kind of thing. The banks will shut you out of the loan market for 7 full years, right?
Right.
So there is a consequence. The other part is student loans didn't used to be this expensive. First off, the interest. My girlfriend pays 7% on her student loan, man. That's murder. That's murder. Student loans should be capped at a 0.5% interest rate, okay? And in fact, I'd rather see just be a 0.5% fee attached to the loan rather than actual interest that can accrue. Finally, student loans need to get out of the federal government. Right now, as of I think it was 2012, the U.S. government took over full responsibility for student loans. Now you have the student with the loan, the U.S. government issuing the loan, and then the university up here. And no one's talking to each other. So nobody cares what the price is. So like I went to University of Missouri. They have like a $2.5 billion endowment, which is a university investment fund. Meanwhile, they've got graduates that can't pay off any of their loans and are working at Starbucks with a $100,000 loan. I'd like to see these universities take on a little more ownership of their loan and also put loans back to the banks rather than the federal government. So I think that, again, man, I've gotten heat from Republicans on this answer. I've gotten heat from Democrats on this answer, but there is no good answer. I'm against a blanket forgiveness. You took the loan out, but I do want you in the future to have the option to default on it. And now what I think would happen in the free economy, if this went back to the banks would look at you and say, all right, Dre Mac, you want a loan? Yes, I'd like a loan. All right, what are you going to study? Well, I'm going to study to become a mechanical engineer. Okay, well, let's see your grades. Let's see your community involvement. Let's make sure you're an upstanding citizen. Let's see your 4-year plan. Okay, cool. You're right. Here's your loan. And then there'd be, Sally who comes up. Sally, what do you want to study? I just want to study general humanities and love languages. And it's like, that degree costs $200,000, Sally. Yeah, well, I like those things. And they say, no, Sally, we're not going to give you a loan to study love languages for $200,000 when we know that career would only pay you like $30,000 or $40,000.
So you're basically saying almost kind of like how we would come in with a business idea and say, to a bank and say, hey, this is my portfolio. This is what I'm looking at. This is my debts and gains as far as the business that I'm trying to run. So can I get a loan? And you're saying, just like you said, well, I want to do a love language spa or whatever. But like you start looking around like, well, love language spas doesn't pay anything. It's too much of a risk. That's what you're saying. It's too much of a risk. So I'm saving you from the risk of paying so much in a student loan to have you in debt for something that it's going to take you 20 years to pay back.
Yeah. And and the truth is it wouldn't be that invasive, but the purpose of that example would be what you would start to see are universities only offering really honest to goodness degrees like medical degrees and legal degrees and STEM degrees. And we would see no general studies degrees and none of these silly degrees that they can get away with now. But yeah, just put the banks back in there so there is actually a human that's responsible if that student gets a terrible job or just defaults on the loan.
Absolutely. Now let's move quickly because I don't want to keep you that long. I'm going to move to healthcare real quick.
Okay.
And the Affordable Care Act, I know that has been one of the talking points from Democrats and Republicans. I listen to Kamala Harris. I listen to Donald Trump, and I listen to and Joe Biden and Bernie Sanders and all these different type of pundits that's talking about the Affordable Care Act and how that is beneficial, how is it detrimental. yeah, I feel like, that all American citizens should have health care. You
Okay.
know, especially with and I'm talking just about my community because of the massive amount of health risks and in
Hmm.
certain places low, not enough. I can say fresh food markets and different things like that. So a lot of health risks is involved, and a lot of paying jobs right now. If I go work at Target,
Yeah.
Target's going to charge me X amount of dollars for my insurance. But
Yeah.
if I get through the Affordable Care Act, maybe I save $50. You know
Okay.
what I'm saying, a month. So how is pulling that completely back? How
Yep.
would that look for Americans and Americans who already have it? When you pull that back, they have nothing. How do we work towards that so we could be able to have some type of healthcare system that's available and affordable for everyone?
Okay, so now this question is an awesome one, and I won't talk around it. I'll give you a lot of
Right.
direct answers, but I just have to warn you and the viewers. This is probably, of all the issues we've talked about, there are so many little points to this that we
Mm-hmm.
just couldn't hope to hit all of them at once.
Right,
Like,
right,
for
right.
example, employer health insurance. That's totally skewing and making the health insurance market really messed up for people. That's
Mm-hmm.
something completely off to the side. Okay, now I think you see on my website, I haven't visited the issues page for quite a while, but I believe I'm very straightforward. I fully support a full repeal
Yeah,
of the
totally
Affordable
repeal
Care
the
Act, Obamacare.
unconstitutional ACA. No
Yep,
repeal, no repeal and replace. So no Trump care,
yep,
no Obamacare.
yep.
Strictly done with it altogether.
Yes. No, yeah, right. No ACA, no, it's full repeal, no replace. Now here's why. You had said you believe, I want to ask you kind of a hypothetical question. You had said you believe all people deserve health care, health insurance, right?
Yes,
So I'm
yes,
just assuming that you mean for free, but let's just play with me here.
yeah,
Would you be okay with Medicare for all for $1 per person per month?
yeah. I mean, anything so people are provided with health care.
So
So
affordable
even
quality
if it's
health
a
care.
dollar, even if it's a dollar, if it's $5, just a way for American citizens to be able to have health care,
Okay.
so they could be able to get their conditions and stuff taken care of. They don't have to worry about like I was, and the only reason why I'm saying this because in 2014 my appendix busted. The healthcare insurance that was through my job was so astronomical that I wasn't going to be able to pay for it. So I'm laying in the hospital with a busted appendix, all this stuff, and getting a bill for $12,000 at the end of the day. So that affordable healthcare didn't come in because it was I couldn't. I don't think at the time. I don't know what basically happened as far as like the affordable healthcare, if
Yeah.
I was able to afford that or this or whatever. But I just know I was kind of in a rut. So I was, I always thought, what about the next person that happens to? What about helping the little guy out
Yeah.
that isn't making a lot of money? How can we give them affordable health care? That's really all I care about. I don't care what it's called. How do we get affordable health care, and how do we pay for it where it's economically feasible for everyone?
So it's a lot like everything else we've just been describing. We created the Department of Education in 1980, and immediately the quality of education went down, right?
Okay.
We've
Yes.
created Obamacare in 2013, 2012,
Yeah.
and now,
2020. Yeah. 2012.
right,
Yes.
and now Dre, there are still just as many people uninsured of health insurance today as there were back then. It's just a different group of people now.
Mm-hmm.
The costs have gone up. The quality and access to quality has not gone up,
Mm-hmm.
but the insurance companies are making more money than they ever have.
Right.
The truth of the matter is the entire piece of legislation was written by the health insurance companies.
Right.
The access didn't get easier, the cost didn't get easier, and the insurance that I have to pay didn't go down.
Mm-hmm.
So how do you fix that? I'll tell you exactly. And in fact, I've got it right here, so I'm going to read off of this because I figure we talk about this.
Yes.
So in the last year, President Trump has been trying, but clearly it's just nonstop this up in DC, right?
Right.
So in the
Right.
last year, he's used the power of the pen to write executive orders, and this is what he's done. He wrote an executive order that requires all medical providers to display the price of everything they offer online and in office. So now what you see, they do this in Oklahoma, and the medical costs have plummeted in Oklahoma because entrepreneurs and insurance companies are now shopping around. So as long as you're not having a heart attack and you just need a basic surgery, you can now find and get incentives to go to these less costly clinics and whatnot. He did an executive order requiring to stop price gouging insulin, EpiPen, and other life-saving things like that. If you know anybody who's got insulin or EpiPen, or your viewers, call them up tonight and ask them, hey, has the cost gotten less? Because I've been seeing people for the last month posting their receipts online that their EpiPen used to be $600 and it's now $25.
Right.
He signed an executive order to fast track the approval of 1,200 generic drugs from the FDA. Again, remember how we were talking about Department of Labor, Department of Housing, Department of Health and Human Services? That is the medical department.
Right.
FDA, these places are slowing everything down and making it more expensive. This is actually a bill called Right to Try. This went just over a year ago. No matter who you are, if you've got, say, some type of cancer and you want to try a therapy or a surgery or whatever that isn't approved yet, you now have the right to try that in America. He just signed and this went into effect just a week ago. It's called the Favored Nations Clause. And basically what it's doing is forcing America to compete on a global stage with the countries around the world who have a far less costly drug prices and whatnot. And then also he did some Medicare reform, and he has been busting thousands of people across the country for committing fraud on Medicare. So what he's doing is he's repealing all of these, or delaying or freezing all of these federal agency rules and regulations that are making healthcare slower, more hard to access, and more foggy for me and you, the individuals. Another easy way here, and this actually is an all-encompassing, but there are other medicines out there. The war on drugs. The war on drugs is its own conversation, but it's such a failure. And at this point, states like Colorado and California and others have had marijuana or mushrooms or whatever in their scientific laboratories, looking at them under microscopes, and they're finding honest to goodness, real medicine coming from hemp, coming from cannabis, coming from everything.
Absolutely.
There's a group out of California called MAPS, multiple something psychedelic, I forget, but it's a small clinical office of scientists.
Yes.
In a room with a doctor and a therapist and all of this. They give very, very specifically measured doses of whichever it might be, and then deal with people with PTSD and depression and alcoholism. And they're having wildly successful results. That is another way that's going to drop the price of drugs. We won't have to be addicted to pharmaceuticals and opioids and prescription pills as much, all sorts of other things. But yeah, the Obamacare thing, it's like I said at the very beginning, we could go on for another hour. There's so many.
And I'm not, but
yeah, I know.
Go there because I mean we could. Like I said, at the time that it was coming out, I felt like it was good. And last night I did research the data to see, as far as who actually has any type of healthcare and who doesn't, with the percentages or anything like that, because I just wanted to kind of give your generalization of what you want to do as far as when you say repeal that. What's the solution after the repeal? And you already, and it's on his website. And if you want to research more of his information, all you have to do is go to ryanderks.com. Under issues, you can see all the issues that we're talking about here. And you can actually read them for yourself. And anybody who knows, anytime I do anything about politics, I always tell you, go read for yourself.
Yeah.
Do not listen to me. Don't even listen to Ryan. He actually wrote it down, and you can read it for yourself, so you can get a generalization when you're casting your ballot. What he's putting down is going to be different than what we've seen from Emmanuel Cleaver, and who can give us the best solutions for our future, and especially in Kansas City, Missouri, and other neighboring cities. Now, let's go to the elephant in the room. Of course, we already know that a lot of protests has been going on, and with Black Lives Matter, and you have people on the right to say Black Lives Matter is this. You have people on the left saying, well, these people are this, and you have a lot of fight, and you have a lot of combatants, and the only thing that we're seeing is police brutality that's going on in certain places. Me being a former correction officer, I was a correction officer for 3.5 years before I got out of that industry, went back into sales, and now working for Ford. I've seen both sides of the coin. I don't know if you remember the old municipal correction institution that used to be on Ozark Road, but I worked there before it got shut down, and it's now a part of the Jackson County prison jail system. But we need solutions. The biggest thing, the African American community is looking at the things that are going on and say, how do we get answers?
Yeah.
We can talk about training, we can talk about this, we can talk about that, but how do we get from protesting to action? And how do you feel about that?
How do we get from protest to action?
Yes, because I mean, I'm gonna be honest. We could protest all day long, but if we're not talking to representatives like you, we're not talking to our local governments, we're not talking to our mayors, we're not talking to our police commissioners, and we're not being proactive in the places that these things are happening. So we don't have a George Floyd here. We don't have a Breonna Taylor here. We don't have an Ahmaud Arbery here. We don't have these certain things around. So I feel like it's my job to go out and start talking to people like you and people like, I'd love to sit down with Emmanuel Cleaver and see what he has to say, or any other politicians, because we want a solution. We want answers. What is the action that's going to go forward? If we come down and say, these are our problems that we have, how do we fix the problems that's going on with all this that's going on right now?
Yeah. So, gosh, there's so many. Okay. So let's just talk about some of the demands of the protesters. Mm-hmm. First off, I love protests. I think protests are awesome. I don't care what you're protesting. I think it's awesome. Mm-hmm. I am 100% against, and I will never be for violent protests.
Yeah, I agree with you.
The second the protests get violent, nope, sorry, I'm out. Man, Dre, has somebody ever smacked you in the face and then you said, oh yeah, okay, I agree? Or somebody ever destroyed your stuff and then you say, oh yeah, I never thought about it that way. Mm-hmm. So with the protests,
I will agree with you.
When it comes to the community relations with the police, a couple things I'm totally for is ending no-knock raids, kind of like the Breonna Taylor situation. Mm-hmm. I'm against the military surplus going to our police. When you see like an Iraqi Freedom half-track truck come in, it's kind of spooky. Yeah. I think we need to see more young Black men and women from Ivanhoe, from Oak Park, from these East of Troost neighborhoods serving in the police force of KCPD or whichever police force. Mm-hmm. That way, it's not like nobody knows anybody in the police, in the neighborhood. Right. And then you have a little more of this. You have the police people speaking with the community members working in the police department. I think we have a lot more work to do on prison reform and criminal justice. The police right now have so much weight on their shoulders that they have to bust you.
I can agree.
That comes back to that war on drugs thing. You know what, dude? If you work a long day at the Ford plant and your kids go to bed and whatnot, and you're done for the day and you want to smoke a joint before you go to bed, I don't care, man. Just like with alcohol, don't be out driving, don't be shooting a gun, or be responsible. In the war on drugs, and you immediately lift a ton of work the police have to do. Now, how do you get from just protesting to actual real change? Mm-hmm. And now that's another huge conversation. It's charter schools, so the kids can get a good education. Mm-hmm. The abandoned homes, fill them with stop with the projects, and let's get some Black home ownership. Rent to own projects or whatever it might be. But get out.
I was going to say before you go there, when you look at the conversation of reparations, and I know that's a bigger issue because African Americans have not been able to get their 40 acres and a mule in reparations from slavery. But a concept that came to me that I kind of thought about was, instead of actually a physical dollar amount, having the ability to get a low interest loan on a home. So very minimum interest loan on home, so we can create home ownership, which creates equity within that home, which creates revenue, and that you could be able to build money.
Yeah, man. So yeah, reparations, that's a big one. And obviously it's very controversial. I mean, like, man, like you said, you want a 40 acres and a mule, fine. Let's get everybody a 40 acres and a mule. Or you want, like, I've seen some people say all Black Americans deserve how much was it? Like 100 million or something like that, a check per. And it's like, okay, fine. I'll give you some very concrete examples. In my work of investing in wealth management, retirement planning, I've had millionaires die whose children inherited that money because they were completely bad with money and they couldn't speak the money language. They blew through that money so fast. I talked to a friend of mine, Anthony, the other day, who works at a bank. This guy had when you get hit by a car and you get like a payout settlement?
Yeah.
He got $1.2 million and spent all of it in 6 months. So it's like when we talk reparations, it's like, okay, do you want all the money? Fine. Okay, fine. But like that's not going to be sustainable, right? We need to learn the money language. And I'm right there with you. We want 21st century reparations for Black Americans. Again, the schools, what we talked about, the home ownership we talked about, bringing good union jobs back from China. How about that?
Yeah, absolutely.
I feel like we're all fighting over crumbs of low wage, low skill jobs here. When if you look at pictures of those manufacturing union jobs in China, dude, that is not like a steamy, smoke-filled room with belts and machines. They're really nice, beautiful factories.
And you bring up an excellent point when you talk about that, and I'm gonna kind of divvy back on to the police. But when you talk about that, and this is for the viewers, if you go back and look at the 1950s, and I'm gonna just bring up because my family's from California. So you look at the Watts areas, you look at Compton, you look at these suburban. There were initially suburban areas of California. Once the factory jobs left, then we're talking about Firestone, we're talking about Chrysler, we're talking about particular jobs in that area. When those jobs left, and middle class Black Americans was moving to those areas, coming from the military and coming from those areas. That's when poverty started. And another prime example of that is down in the West Bottoms. There used to be a ton of factories there for people from Kansas City, Kansas, and Kansas, Missouri, via the viaduct. You go down there and work, have good paying jobs. Once those jobs was moved away, and people that grew up in KCK know this, Gateway, Juniper Gardens, and all those other areas became projects because there was no good paying job. So Ryan brings up an excellent point on that. And Ryan, you brought up an excellent point on community policing, making sure that we get people, because back in the day when I was growing up, we knew who our police officers were because they came and spoke to us, gave us baseball cards, football cards, would come talk to us, different things like that. And I believe the reason why you have so much conflict between the community and the police and all the things that's going on, because there's no trust. And when you have no trust within the people that you're paying taxes to protect you, and then you see the things that are going on, well, we just want accountability. Because if I was to go out like the guy did in Compton, I go and shoot at 2 police officers, you know what I'm saying, and risk their lives. So what else going to happen to me? I'm gonna get the chair. So we just want accountability. I think that's the biggest thing that we're looking at, is just accountability. I don't care what name is attached to it as far as political party. If you have a solution that is tangible for me to say, I agree with that. That's the only thing that I care about.
And I got to tell you, Dre Mac, that's the hardest solution. I'll tell you right now, I don't have an answer.
Right.
I have been to all but the ones that have been going on Johnson County, I haven't gone to. Every Black Lives Matter protest that's happened since George Floyd, I've been at, and I've been live streaming them on my Facebook page. And I talk to the protesters, man, and I talk to the police. And what I keep hearing from the police is this: nobody hates bad cops as much as good cops. They're making the job hell for us.
Yeah, they are.
That makes sense. Okay.
They are.
So then I go to the protesters and I say, hey, man, this is what the cops keep telling me. And then the protesters say, then hold the bad cops accountable.
It's simple.
Okay, right. So then at these other protests, I keep going back and forth, and I go back to the cops and I say, hey, man, you know that thing about good cops hate bad cops? Yeah. I said, well, then why don't you just hold them accountable? Why don't you blow the whistle? What? That's, Dre Mac, that's where we don't have an answer yet, because I'll tell you what. I
worked in law enforcement, so that's very hard.
Yeah, okay, so maybe, so like it was either Excelsior Springs or Sugar Creek Police Department. A couple police officers who are good cops got together. They blew the whistle on a bad cop who was doing some dirty stuff. And the guys at the top who were running the police department fired the good cops.
Yep.
So man, I don't have the answer, but I'll tell you what we can do. At least step one is publicly let it be known that we support police, we support good police, and that we want to be there to help these good police have some way of turning in the bad police. Like I said, I don't have the answer right now, but that's where the disconnect is, and that's where we have to figure out how those good cops can rat out the bad cops. I just don't have that answer yet.
Absolutely. And and I'm just looking at a couple issues before I let you go, because I don't want to keep you that long. We already almost an hour in, but you got I do believe in your Second Amendment gun rights. I 180%, 91 million, the right for people to keep their guns. I truly am with you on that. That has nothing to do with, and I do have conservative views, and that's something that I feel like every American should have, still the right to bear arms. Now, I had a guy who came up, and of course, I live in the Hickman Mills Hickman Mills area, and the guy came up selling home services for home alarms and stuff like that. And he was surprised that I'm saying, well, I just need a couple more guns. And then, when nobody coming here then, he was like, guns? And he was shocked. No, we're gun owners, and I believe it's my right to protect my home, protect my children, protect my wife, protect my property.
Yep.
And a lot of people are taking back on that, but no, I'm 180% agree with you. The right to bear arms, keep it. Not being friends, don't come take it. I agree with you on that.
Dre Mac, I hear you say you have 6 children.
Yeah, yes, I do.
So you've been a responsible parent and a responsible gun owner around those kids, I assume.
Yes.
See, and a lot of people, when they come out against guns and whatnot, they talk about shootings and all that. Dude, we don't have a gun problem in America. We have a mental health problem in America where people are so upset and sad and angry they're willing to either kill themselves, or they're so mad that they're willing to kill a bunch of other people just to spite them in the community and then kill themselves. We don't have we got mental health issues.
Since you're talking about mental health, real quick, let me jump something on to you. When a lot of far leftists brought this up, and I don't believe it came from the black community, but they're saying defund the police. And a lot of people, when Republicans here for Fox News pundits and all this, talk about, well, they just want to just disband the police. And no. That's not what I'm talking about. And you brought this up earlier. Military style police weapons should be not funded, but the funds that they get, let's allocate those funds to professionals that actually go out when you you don't know who's a mental health case or who's a drug-related case, like PCP and different things like that. Like I said, I worked at Municipal Correction Institution. We had a lot of people who were not on drugs that were mental health that we had to take to Western Missouri because they were having a mental health crisis. Mm-hmm. And I don't feel like a person should go out that doesn't have that experience, like the cop that was in Houston who shot a guy who was having a mental health issue 21 times. He was just fired, but he shot a guy 21 times. He was having a mental health breakdown, and he didn't know if he was on drugs or not. But having a professional go out with these people to diffuse the situation first, have the cop as backup if something goes out, and let's get these people to a mental health or drug facility to get them some help instead of automatically just putting them in jail or different things like that. What do you say to that?
So the first thing you had mentioned, defund the police, that is a very strange motto because it means something different to a lot of people.
Yeah, to everybody. Yeah.
When I went to this one Westport protest, if you remember, there was a Black Lives Matter protest where they burnt a lot of stuff in Westport. It wasn't that night, but it was a night after, I think. And I went up there, and the guy was saying, "No, we don't want to defund the police. We want to abolish the police." And you can see that video is on my Facebook and YouTube. You can watch that.
Yeah.
But okay, so I'm not cool with abolishing the police.
Yeah. No.
I understand. Now, again, this is where the police organization needs to come together and reroute those funds. Now, when I talk to police, they tell me they don't have that much free money. Like they make 40 to 50,000 on average, right? They don't have that much free money to just reroute to other ideas or other programs. Initially, I was against replacing police officers with social workers. I read an article earlier this week where, God, what country? some city or state has experimented with it and are having decent results. So I'm neutral on that right now. However, I already feel like our police are so stretched thin. If we have, say, 1,000 police
You're saying
officers
in Kansas City per se, right?
I just don't know that cutting our police force by 25%, even though we do add those social workers, I'm not sure if that's wise. So again, this is where I come back to the earliest thing I kept telling you. I don't have all the answers, but I don't want this to be a federal one-size-fits-all. I want all the states and cities of police officers to experiment, and then we'll see what happens. And like I said earlier, especially right now with the police issue, those positive results, wherever they come from, are going to spread so quickly, and they'll get implemented in other cities. I'm open to ideas, but I'm not for abolishing or cutting the police force in half or something like that.
I'm not for abolishing the police department. I personally think that doesn't make sense to me. I don't care how far left you are, or you jumping off the cliff, or far right. I think that's ridiculous. I just believe that in certain cases, like with us, and just give you this brief example, is that we were getting attacked in our jails from people that were having mental health issues. I was on television I had a big guy, like literally I'm trying to take him down, but I'm small, and he runs me into the back of the actual steel door to our jail. And it was a big thing, and we're coming to find out the majority of the people who were coming to the municipal corrections institution, a lot of the people who were claimed to be on drugs were actually mental health problems, having mental health issues, whether it's bipolarism and different things like that. So a lot of programs, when they came in, was having mental health evaluations prior to them being placed in the cell. And once that mental health evaluation goes in, we know to take them to Western Missouri, or to have them in there, and if they're having a drug-induced hallucination or whatever. So it was a lot of things that was going on at that particular time. This was 2005, but since I've seen that, I was like, well, if you just had, if you get a call and this guy is in the street naked, instead of putting a bag over the guy's head and letting the guy die, let's have one. I'm not saying have a bunch of paraprofessionals out there, but let a paraprofessional have a ride along in that particular call and get their expert opinion to the police officer to be able to diffuse the situation properly, so we don't have anyone get hurt or violated in any type of way. That's just my thought.
Yeah. And one last thing on that thing, Dre Mac, is something that I meant to mention earlier. I've heard from police that I have not heard anyone on the social media or the news mention. There's only one job in America where they give you a gun, a taser, and handcuffs, and they say, your job's so dangerous, you might need to use this. When these police officers are so stretched so thin, and the anti-police climate right now, I keep hearing about the number of police that go on 2 or 3 or 4 calls a night, traffic stops, especially in Kansas City right now, gun crimes, domestic, all this stuff. We don't realize how much actual PTSD there is, where these cops do this 4 or 5 days a week, and then they have to just shut it off and go home to their family and pretend like it didn't happen. There's also a mental health issue happening with our police, where they have to go through so much traumatic experience. So, yeah, man, there's a lot of stuff to figure out on this topic, no doubt.
Absolutely. And the last thing I'm gonna get to before I let you go, the right to life. Now, of course, you brought up something now, and I just want to just mention this because I went to your Twitter page. You said Emmanuel Cleaver is the only preacher that I know who is for abortions. And I'm not gonna lie, I kind of laughed out loud on it, because I don't know why I thought I heard your voice saying this, but it was profound to me. But you said, he said, however, I don't think the issue is just as simple as zero tolerance for abortion, or the opposite. The technology is here and never going away, even with a ban. I support President Trump's stance: no abortion unless in the case of rape, incest, or morality. Kind of explain yourself on that one.
Okay, so here's some stuff you got to know. Since Roe versus Wade and abortion became a thing, just shy of 70 million Americans have been aborted. The peak of abortions was just over 4 million in 1991. I believe that was the peak. 4 million babies aborted every year. Now, here's the thing, man. I can't imagine what it would be like to be raped by people you don't know who violate your personal agency, right?
Yes.
So what I wrote there, I am pro-life, except for in the instances of rape or incest, or if it's going to be, the mother or child will die during birth. Now, the technology's here, man. We're not going to ever forget how to do an abortion, right? It's just like, you try to ban it. Well, people are going to find a way. But I'm also not for just like abortions, on the corner, at the Quickie Mart or whatever. You know what I mean? There's where I come from on this abortion thing isn't so much of should it be legal or illegal. It's more of a spiritual thing, more of a societal thing. What are we doing as people if we're okay with, oh, you know what? I'm just not ready for a child. Oh, you know what? I can't afford a child, or whatever that reason may be. If it's something that simple, well, you all know what happens when we have sex. There's got to be responsibility for your actions.
Absolutely.
And, like, for example, a very, very, very cut to the bone example, my man, is in New York City. Type it into Google. You'll see articles about this. Right now, in New York City, there are more black children aborted than there are born. In New York City, the black community is committing genocide on itself. And so this is one of the things where I'm just like, it's not so much should it be legal or illegal. It's more of a spiritual thing. What are we doing as a people? So, yeah, I'd like to see the pro-life issue continue. And we're not going to just have a blanket ban on abortion. That'll never happen. But we can take some small steps back to what would be, common sense stances. I'll tell you this, man. This position I just described to you, while you may think it sounds reasonable or something, I have gotten so much hate from Democrats or liberals on this, and I've gotten so much hate from conservatives and Republicans. But this is just where I stand, man. I feel like I'm pro-life, except for in those very rare instances. And even then, I would only be okay with it maybe up to like the heartbeat. Because at that point, you've had about 6 weeks to make that decision. And if after 6 weeks it's still gone on and then the actual heartbeat is there, all right, I'm sorry, you had a chance. So yeah, that's kind of how I feel on the right to life issue.
My thing, and then you have someone who just posed a question. My thing is, I believe in I'm more pro-choice because I just feel like I can't tell and I'm with you. Spiritually, I'm 100% against abortions. I know what I did, so I feel like I should take responsibility for that. No matter what. But I also believe, I can't tell a woman what to do. So I mean, that's a ficky kind of statement. But I just, I hear from a lot of women. And I also feel like a lot of women say, well, it's my body. I can do what I want to with it. You're absolutely correct.
Yep.
You're absolutely correct on that. And I just feel like as a man, I don't feel right telling a woman, no, you should do this. You should keep it and all of that. I feel like their own spirituality and where they're going to go afterwards. If they do that, they ain't got nothing to do with me. I might be against it, but I can't make anybody do what they don't want to do. So that it's a tough one for me. I truly understand where you're coming from, and I'm not downplaying that, but I also, that's just my personal thought on that.
I get you. Like I said, that's probably the most controversial political topic, no doubt.
Right. Now, one question before I let you go, Aisha put on there, how does he feel about the death penalty?
I'm undecided on the death penalty. If you've gone out and murdered 6 people in one night and you're going to get life in prison, isn't that kind of like essentially a death penalty? Now, if someone's asking about the lethal injection or whatever, man, to be honest, I don't know, because part of me feels like you shouldn't be killing those people either. But the other side is, well, if that guy's worthy of life in prison, why should we pay 50 or 60 or 70,000 a year for him in jail? So Aisha, it's a good question. And truthfully, to be honest, I haven't studied my thoughts on this long enough and studied both sides of the argument to really say Oh, I'm definitely for it. I'm definitely against it. So unfortunately, Aisha, I don't have a really good answer for you on this one. But
And
so yeah.
yeah, and with me on that particular issue, that's one reason why I kind of I've been following Kamala Harris for the last like 3 years, but that's one thing that she was big on is not the death penalty, and she gave her examples on that, kind of like how you did. I mean, the guy's riding in jail for the rest of his life. Why does he need a quick way out? That's just my thought,
Mhm.
And she said, and even on her thing, she said, I'm not excusing rapists and stuff like that, but I believe that that's a quick way out for someone. And me personally, I do the same thing. I'd rather you ride for the rest of your life and think about what you did, that playing over and over and over again what you did,
Yeah.
and it's and we I care about human beings. I care about life. But I also think you need to sit and really think about what you did.
And
You
the other
know,
thing, man, is like, do you know the Innocence Project?
no, explain that. What the is that what we're talking about? Were you talking about the when a person who is being convicted of a crime and they come to find out that there wasn't
Yep.
the person that was convicted? That Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah,
They come
lawyers
out,
and
they wasn't
scientists. Yeah,
convicted. Now
lawyers and
they
scientists are
released.
using
Yeah.
modern day technology to go back to old life in prison cases and
Yes.
do an updated case. And they free a few people a year who are put in
Yes.
life in prison. What if you'd killed them 5 years ago, or even a day before that came out?
Absolutely.
Yep.
Absolutely. All right, Ryan. I don't want to keep you because I know you got other things
You bet.
that's going on now. I really appreciate you stopping by and hanging out with me. I think this was refreshing. Let me give you a round of applause for that.
Yay. And yeah, I just want to let everybody know, RyanDerks.com. You can find all my stuff there. Facebook, Instagram, Twitter, YouTube, all of it. Or like I told you and Dre, you can come, man. Wednesday night, 7 p.m., Joey's Barbershop down there at 180V and 18th and Vine. We talk about the stock market, how to make real money, how to learn that money language. And again, this kind of Joey's idea. It's how to get Black men and women in the community to really build wealth and ownership. So I want to give you an invite and anybody listening. But yeah,
Absolutely.
you guys, it's going to take young people. And Drake, can we do this again?
Yeah, absolutely. Anytime that you want, you're locked into my phone now. So anytime that you want, shout out to Joey's Cuts. Also, I know that he was running for one of the board members of the Kansas City credit union. So that's a credit union I've been with, of course, since I worked for the city for years. So shout out to Joey's Cuts and everything that he's doing for the community. And this is exactly what we need. We need more interaction with people that is going to represent us, no matter what the color barrier is, no matter what their political stance is. Let's talk and let's get an understanding. And the
Yep.
more that we get an understanding, the more that we will get a future where we can all be together and be united
Yep.
as
Absolutely, man. Absolutely.
Americans. So
Till next time. All right, Dre?
till next time, I
All right.
appreciate everybody who tuned in to the Dre Mac Show here. Thank you so much again for hanging out with me, and we'll be doing this way before November 2nd also.
You bet. See you, dude.
All right. All right. So thank you guys for tuning in to the Dre Mac Show. If you got anybody else who wants to be interviewed, all you have to do is let them know. Inbox me. We could be able to get more of these conversations going. I love everyone. Peace and shalom to everyone that's out on Facebook, who is tuned in, who's on YouTube, that tuned in. I love y'all. Thank you so very much. And I'm out. All right, that's it for the audio version of it. If you guys want to check this this whole entire podcast back out and you missed it, make sure that you go to my YouTube page, the Dre Mac Show on the YouTube page. Make sure you check me out on Apple Podcasts, Google Podcasts, Spotify, iHeartRadio, Speaker Radio. Well, just Google me, the Dre Mac Podcast Show. You can be able to check out this entire podcast and many other podcasts that you might like in its entirety. I love y'all. Peace. Shalom to everyone.